Ladies and gentlemen, it is a real honor to introduce a leader whose influence reaches across borders and whose commitment to the maritime industry is both unwavering and deeply respected. Arsenio Dominguez, Secretary General of the IMO, has taken the helm at a moment of extraordinary complexity for our industry. And he has done so with vision, with integrity, and a deep understanding of the challenges we face. Arsenio, thank you for your service and for your exceptional leadership. You've been a great friend. For those of us who have had the pleasure of working with him, we know he brings not just experience, but genuine warmth, openness, and a collaborative spirit that makes a real difference. The maritime sector, as you know, and as we've talked about all morning, is undergoing a profound transformation. And now more than ever, we need your guidance to help navigate the uncertainty ahead. At ABS, you have our full support as you work to bring the global community together around a shared regulatory framework. The industry really needs the IMO to step up and deliver now. We are seeing a growing patchwork of regional regulations when what we need is global alignment. Clear, consistent, and practical regulations supporting innovation, ensuring safety, and accelerating decarbonization. We are all looking to you, Arsenio, to help bring some much-needed clarity to the regulatory landscape, because what comes next matters. The decisions we make now will share and shape the trajectory of our industry for decades to come. We need to get it right. As I have said, success in the decarbonization of shipping will be a team sport. So please join me in welcoming our captain, Secretary General of the IMO, Mr. Arsenio Dominguez.
How do I turn this on? Oh, it's on already. Wow. You said that's what happens when you're late. You don't get the explanations of how the system works. I think I'm going to be apologizing for the rest of the week for being late to every single event. But that's the apology that you're getting from me. Thank you for rearranging the program. Apologies for the inconveniences. I'm probably keeping you away from lunch, but that's fine. I haven't had lunch either. Chris, thank you very much for the introduction, and you highlighted a couple of points. The challenges ahead, absolutely. We are aware of that. This is probably not the easiest time. It doesn't mean that IMO will not continue to deliver not only on the efforts, but on the commitments that have been made in several areas, from the environment, decarbonization in particular, together with the enhancement of protection of our seafarers, at the same time as increasing safety and security. And of course, all that comes with your participation, your cooperation, your understanding, and your input to the processes that we have ongoing at IMO. I'll try not to repeat myself, but it's very difficult not to do so. I am confident, and I'm going to keep repeating that for the rest of the week, on the adoption of the next set of regulations next month at IMO. And I base that on the track record of the organization, on the cooperation that we all have, the understanding that we still have some challenges and some concerns in particularly to address. But that's where we excel at IMO. We listened, we move forward, we bring every single party together because we believe in multilateralism, and we believe in particularly on global regulations for this amazing global industry. I'll keep it to that because I think that you have a series of questions for me, and probably that will be more targeted into any specific answers or information that I can provide to you. And I use the word can provide because I don't have answers to all the questions, I can tell you that, but I do have the commitment to continue working on any comments, any concerns that you have as we move forward. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for being with us today. You are super busy all the time, but I think this particular week, obviously, is particularly taxing, and I know you have a number of commitments, so thank you for being with us. And if I may just point out, I'm very happy that at least at our event, we do keep the time, so we will not have you be late further.
I'm already late for the next event, don't worry.
So with that, I'd like also to thank Chris for his partnership for this event and for the introduction for the keynote, our keynote speaker. I have a few questions, and the first one, the first set of questions is on decarbonization and market impact. So how does the IMO plan to allocate revenues from the new global GHG levy, specifically between technology, R&D, green fuels, and support for developing nations?
Thank you, and that's one of those that I keep receiving, not only this week. We're still in the process, that's not, I mean, it's not a secret. We are in the process of establishing the framework of the guidelines of how we're going to distribute the revenues of the collections from the economic measure. It's been made very clear that there will be a reward mechanism for early movers, for those that are, of course, using green technologies as well as zero to net zero fuels. It's also the investment that we need to make in supporting member states in the process of decarbonization. That starts with small and developing states and least developed countries. We have already mentioned, and it's very clear on the strategy as well, that we will work with the countries when it comes to infrastructure when required for bunkering facilities as well as port infrastructure, because we understand the needs for the ports in the ship-to-port interface. There's also distribution of revenues in relation to R&D, the development of further technologies, further green fuels, as well as the seafarers. We need to support our people, the training of the seafarers. So the projection, in case the question comes later, is that with the entry into force in 2027, and the collection will start afterwards, by around 2028, 2029, the projection is to collect around between 10 and 12 billion US dollars, which of course are going to be then input into the sector in order to support the decarbonization. I know there are proposals, the documents have been published, and in particular, if I can mention the International Chamber of Shipping, because they have already submitted their assessment into how at least the rewards mechanism should be addressed in relation to the distribution of revenues, and that's already part of the work plan for the organization that will start the week right after the externalization of the MEPC. Once the amendments are adopted next month, the week after, immediately we're working on the next set of guidelines.
Thank you very much. So now let me go to the next question on fuel transition. We all know that a lot of the alternative fuels are are in development stage, not available yet to large scale. So what is the IMO's role in facilitating global availability of alternative fuels like ammonia, methanol, hydrogen, LNG, and at the same time ensuring safety standards for their use?
Our regulatory process is there to stimulate the change and the technological development. That's why we are fuel and technology agnostic. The next set of rules are the ones that are going to, of course, create that additional push for everyone to start moving into the phase of decarbonization. But I keep calling on all the early movers, everyone that can, and there are several out there right now that are already taking those steps in order to move to decarbonization. We have projects within the organization right now. One of those that I can mention is the Green Voyage, as well as the fuels technologies, which are we're using pilot projects in several countries where we're testing technologies that can support the decarbonization, both at the international shipping trade as well as the domestic fleets. We are expanding our portfolio in that respect. with the pricing mechanism coming into force, there would also be funding that will go further into research and development, not only at IMO, but throughout the sector in order to kind of incentivize that. We continue our work on the life cycle assessments on the fuels. You mentioned LNG in your list, and I'm not blind, I'm reading the news as well, and the comments that have been made in relation to the work that IMO is using or how we're addressing LNG. We started working with LNG a long time ago. It's quite a few years. We developed all the regulatory process. It's actually assisting us in relation to other fuel gases and how we can tackle the safety aspects as well as the training requirements. LNG, I continue to reiterate, is a transition fuel as well as a fuel in transition. So within the life cycle assessment, we're addressing all the fuels that are there. We recognize, and we knew from the beginning as well, that the scaling up will take place by around the mid-30s, and that was reflected in the goal set for 2030 when the aim is to strive for 5% of uptake of renewable fuels, aiming at 10%. But all that information was already with us in the different assessments, and that's the way that we are moving forward. What it is important to recognize as well is that some fuels, including LNG, still carbon-based, and of course, there is a process to continue to evolve into cleaner fuels, but fuels that do not comply with the mechanisms that will be adopted next month, of course, will be the ones that contribute, and from there, we will move into supporting the next phases of development within the sector.
So you addressed the LNG question. Obviously, the industry has expressed concerns about the treatment of LNG. But more broadly, ship owners have argued that decarbonization targets may outpace the technology readiness. And how do you respond to that concern?
I can only speak from the experience. And every time, depending where I travel, visiting countries in different regions of the world, I've seen the progress in automation, in decarbonization. At IMO, the presentations that we have received, the ship models of the prototypes of the ammonia vessels. The first one is actually coming into service next year. Hydrogen, the developments that exist around the world in relation to ammonia and hydrogen becoming a fuel, as well as methanol and ethanol. Singapore is already bunkering some of those fuels. The training requirements have been developed. When it comes to LNG, the engine manufacturers are making strides in reducing the methane slip. So the signs are there, and the research and development demonstrates that. Yes, we still need the upscaling, but of course, this is when, again, I call for the early movers, because some are waiting for the rules first to come into place before the actions are taken. Now, I don't criticize the sector in that respect, because for me, it's human nature. We normally tend to wait until the very end before we act upon it. But I will not stop calling for everyone that can take the first steps and be one of those leaders to immediately take action. And that, of course, is part of the reward that is going to be acknowledged with the adoption of the economic pricing mechanism.
Thank you. So now let me turn to another very important topic, the shadow fleet and enforcement. So the rise of the dark fleet clearly undermines safety, sanctions compliance, and fair competition. So what concrete actions is the IMO taking to address this growing risk?
People sometimes don't recognize this, but I always find this question more challenging for me to address because of some of the limitations that we have at IMO in relation to the dark and shadow fleet. We're a technical organization. I have the support of the member states from the moment that I took over as Secretary General last year in saying that whenever geopolitical actions or situations have a negative impact in shipping, in particular in seafarers, I will get involved within the remit of the organization and engage with all the agencies and countries that can support us. The dark and shadow fleet, we're looking from the perspective of our regulatory process. So we're carrying out right now the scoping exercise within the legal committee of IMO in order to review how the rules applied and where we can identify any gaps that can strengthen the implementation of the IMO rules. We adopted a resolution at the Assembly in 2023 calling on member states to address the increase numbers and incidents in the dark and shadow fleet, particularly those related to ship-to-ship transfer, lack of insurance coverage on the ships, as well as the turning off of AIS and LRIT in order not to disclose the position of the vessel. Our program of technical cooperation and capacity building, in particular to developing countries, is also to enhance the implementation of IMO instruments. We rely on post-day control, and at the last meeting, last week of July, of the subcommittee on implementation of IMO instruments, we took the proactivity action in raising it with the membership to move forward towards establish a database at IMO where we can collect all the information from post-day controls so it can be freely accessed by them, because some of the other actions that we have seen is that ships that cannot, or post-day controls that cannot carry out their activities in some ships because the right of innocent passage, which of course we respect in relation to the law of the sea convention, then we ask all the post-day controls to take actions on those ships, carry out the necessary inspections. Not always it's the case, but we need to enhance that exchange of information. At the same time, of course, engaging with the UN in further actions in dealing with the root causes of what is causing the dark and shadow fleet. Sanctions is not within the remit of IMO. We don't deal with them, and that's what I always refer to substandard shipping in my message, that no ships that do not comply with the IMO regulations, then of course should not be operating out there. But it is a progressive challenge for us because we don't have all the answers, all the solutions, and we rely on the support from member states. There's an increased number of fraudulent registries. It's an area where we're trying with the reporting as well as the engaging with the member states, but it's difficult for us to completely put an end to it right now. If I'm very honest, it's like when we deal with cyber attacks, they get creative, and we need to continue to enhance the governance and power that the member states of IMO have in order to address those concerns when it comes to dark and shadow fleet, and in particular as well right now, the increased number of ships that are operating out there on illegal flags, illegal registration, or actually not registrations at all.
Not an easy topic, obviously. So let me turn now to innovation and technology. My first question would be on the maritime single window. What progress has been made on mandatory adoption of electronic data exchange, and how will this improve trade efficiency?
So the amendments enter into force. Yes, it hasn't been fully implemented by all the member states, and we have specific programs supporting the member states in order to carry out first their internal analysis, because some of the actions that we have noticed is that it's perceived that the maritime single window is just a system that you install, but the reality is that for us, we need to look at how that system is going to work within the country, how it's going to connect with the other entities that require to also share the information in advance in order to actually facilitate trade. So right now, we are progressing on implementation. It is not 100%. I acknowledge that, but that's why the several projects that we are lining up and the sharing of regional approaches as well in relation to the implementation of the single window.
Thank you. So now let me turn to the autonomous ships, which seem to be gaining quite a lot of traction. What is IMO's roadmap for integrating autonomous ships into international regulation and ensuring liability clarity?
Oh, that's an easy question. Finally, I get one. Finalization of the voluntary code, it's next year by the Maritime Safety Committee. As soon as we finalize the voluntary code there, then the facilitation committee and the legal committee will look into their remit, into their aspects. That includes liability. And of course, then we will be the experience building phase of the implementation of the voluntary code. So we aim at early 30s in order to look forward to the finalization of the mandatory code for the entry into force, again in the early 30s. In the meantime, I also want to take this opportunity to reiterate that we are using the progress and acknowledging the progress in relation to automation. That doesn't mean that the goal is to eradicate or eliminate seafarers from on board the ships. For certain routes, and we have seen that already in some parts of the world, short sea shipping, for example, benefits from ship automation. But when it comes to ocean-going vessels, we need the support from the seafarers. So that's why this is one of those areas of technological advancements that will enhance the operational aspects of the ships, increase safety, increase sustainability and environmental credentials of the vessels, and at the same time address some of the difficulties or the challenges that we're facing when it comes to the human element. We talked about the lack of qualified seafarers available to operate within the sector, the fact that we also don't have enough seafarers on board the ships, and of course fatigue continues to be one of the main causes for accidents, and at the same time there's a lot of admin burden. Technology here can support the seafarers and then allow them to actually look into the specific task to maintain the maneuverability and safety of the vessels, and not so much all the paperwork that they also have to do. So here's where we're actually balancing that approach. We're going to look, we have separate guidelines for cybersecurity that are also going to continue to be reviewed in order to address the implementation voluntary first and then mandatory of the autonomous ships code.
Thank you. Now, let me conclude this category with data and transparency. Will the IMO move forward toward real-time emissions reporting and transparent compliance monitoring?
I don't have the answer to that right now. Of course, one of the goals and the objectives that are set for the organization as well, that I'm campaigning of, is to enhance transparency in all the work that we do, the way that we share information, the way that the sector, the operators also share information, and the way that we communicate with everyone else, including amongst ourselves. We talked about how we cooperate. You normally notice that I don't use those words, cooperation and collaboration, very loosely, because I always want to focus on the actions of how we're doing it. There's still, areas on the organizations where we're looking to enhance the transparency and the sharing of information. And of course, as we progress into the regulatory process on the environmental agenda, I'm sure this is one of those topics that will continue to be debated. And the more trust that we build amongst each other, the easier it's going to be to share information as well.
Absolutely. So let me turn now to seafarers and the human element, another very important category for the industry. How is IMO preparing seafarers for the green transition, especially in training for new fuels and technologies, while also ensuring fair treatment and welfare?
Oh, there's like 3 questions in one there. So when it comes to the training, we are currently going through the comprehensive review of the STCW convention. I normally don't use acronyms, so I hope that everyone is following me now if I've forgotten to explain it. But that's the Training, Certification and Watchkeeping Convention for Seafarers, one of our pillars conventions. The plan right now is to finalize the review by around 2029. However, we also agree, because of the importance of the safety aspects and trainings of decarbonization, that we will progress with those requirements and developing the necessary training standards. We started this year focusing on methanol and ethanol training, because those were the fuels that we had more data and input from. We agree that the next ones we will move into ammonia as well as hydrogen-derived fuels. And of course, we're also progressing on the technology from carbon capture and sequestration, and it's not secret that we've also started to consider the review of nuclear technology in shipping. So as we move ahead with all this, we will be developing all these training requirements. The pricing mechanism would also provide that financial support for these areas when it comes to the seafarers. And again, I reiterate, that was clearly outlined in the GHG strategy of 2023. I think the second topic that you were mentioning that was more related to the criminalization.
No, but how do you ensure welfare?
The welfare. For the welfare, of course, we have to keep our relationship with international labor organizations, because we focus on the training aspects. When it comes to The social aspects of shipping, this is where, particularly the Maritime Labor Convention of 2006, is the one that then set the standards. But we work very closely with ILO in this respect because we share the guidelines for the inspection of the ships in relation to the compliance with those related instruments. But at the same time, and I'll take the opportunity to continue to request and ask for the industry to invest in seafarers. We want to attract new talent. We want to demonstrate that we care about the people that make this industry move every single day for the benefits of everyone in the planet, including all of us sitting here. We need to invest. We need to treat seafarers better. We need to provide them with better accommodations, with proper coverage. We also need to provide them with Wi-Fi. We need to treat them in the same way that we treat our staff here in land. So my call, my reiteration as well, is for all of you, not just to do it, but also campaign and actually ask others to do the same thing. Because we need to invest in people if we really want to be serious about what we're saying into supporting seafarers and attracting new talent to the sector.
Thank you. So, concluding this category of questions, can you elaborate a bit on the efforts to enhance gender equality and diversity within the maritime sector as part of your broader strategy? I know you've been a big proponent of gender equality and diversity.
Yes, and my next event, the one that I'm late for, is of course WISTA UK. But everybody knows that I will be late for the rest of the events for today. I'm working into how I can demonstrate internally with the actions that I take at IMO in the organization and the secretariat, how easy it is, and I'm going to put it like that, to actually support the role of women and further empowering and integration of women within the sector. The numbers from the recent survey, WISTA IMO survey that we disclosed in May this year, of course, demonstrated that there was more participation in the survey, but at the same time, the numbers regressed rather than increased in relation to the participation of women. Oh, I'm getting the time is up. I'm late and it's still making the whole thing even later. And again, we develop a strategy within IMO into how we're improving. This is a strategy for the Secretariat, share it with the member states in order to seek further support and bring this kind of actions into more of an international approach. And it's how we are progressing when it comes to recruitment, support, training, mentoring programs within IMO in order to enhance not only the visibility, but the participation of women. I've made it very clear of the actions, not just for myself, but the whole Secretariat, that in order to demonstrate that we're serious, we take what some people call small tokens of specific tangible actions, like not participating in panels when there's no female representation. We have actually, touching on that respect, a database of qualified women that are registered and ready to participate in any shipping events. You just have to go to the IMO website and you have it there. And of course, calling for everybody to do the same. We all talk about leadership. We will not be able to change this pattern if we don't demonstrate the leadership. And that means that we don't have to be always the ones that have to be present in the events. We need to acknowledge that women need support. When there's only one woman on a board surrounded by men, we need to facilitate. We need to actually create the platforms and be the ones that lead by example. And I will not slow down on that one either. From empowering women, from the seafarers, from transparency and being more open in communication, as well as promoting this good sector and accepting that in some areas we still have room for improvement. It's always going to make us better. It's some of the goals I will continue to reiterate during my tenure as Secretary General.
Well, let me say, you have the unique ability to combine passion with action. So that's wonderful. I think it's part of the recipe for success. Concluding our discussion, if I may ask you about your strategic vision, what do you see as the IMO's top priority for the next 5 years, and how are you going to balance the competing pressures of decarbonization, digitalization, maritime security, and so many other channels that you, I mean, you have 175 members, I think, trying to get a unanimous decision is not that easy, so.
It's 176. We got an additional one. 5 years. My tenure finishes in 2027, but I'm still thinking ahead into leaving the organization on track for the next step. If the member states agree, I will get a second term, but that's down to the member states next year. Decarbonization will continue to be top of the agendas of IMO. The geopolitical negative effect that certain actions are having in shipping as well will continue to be top there. Seafarers. Again, not only on the areas of the training as well as the criminalization of seafarers and how we can further support them, but also how we make the sector more diverse when it comes to the people. We are used at IMO to actually handling different agendas. People don't really get to see that because some meetings hit the headlines more than others. But IMO doesn't stop on the Friday once we finalize and adopt a report. We continue to work, engage the membership that includes not only the member states, but also all the stakeholders, continue to have the meetings, use events like this in order to share and compare the actions that have been taken and how we move forward in all the areas that we regulate in shipping. We have over 50 instruments. We continue to keep updating. We learn from experience. We learn from all of you, technological development, and that's how we actually continue to work. It is challenging, but it's actually very interesting. It's a great time to be part of this sector because it allows us to see the progress that we make, the areas where we can continue to improve, because there's always room for improvement for as good as we are, and at the same time, make this transport sector what we always say that it is, one that demonstrates its credentials, one that is committed to continue to provide over 80% of goods to everyone around the world, and that is serious in being sustainable. And from then onwards, of course, share that experience and expertise with others for those sectors to also learn from us. We may be the first ones, we're going to be the first ones to actually take the next steps, not only on security, but again in areas of decarbonization. And of course, the way that we're addressing the current geopolitical challenges, we need the support from other sectors to meet all our goals. We need to learn from them, but we also want them to learn from us and engage more with us.
Secretary General, thank you for the general allotment of your time and for sharing your unique insight with us. If I may invite the audience to